All right, let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to get through today, and I'm excited to have some fantastic presenters. So welcome everyone to the Tippie webinar series, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Ashley Durham, and I am the Director of Alumni Engagement at the Tippie College of Business. The Tippie webinar series is an initiative of the Alumni Engagement Department. Our goal is to bring the knowledge of our faculty and staff to you wherever you may be in the world. I'm excited to have Beth Livingston, Patrick Fan, and Cindy Meis with us today as they discuss the next wave of AI and the impact it could potentially have on jobs. Just some information before we get started. If you have some questions, please be sure to put them into the Q&A chat box, not to be confused with the chat feature. I anticipate that we're going to have a lot of questions today, and so using the Q&A chat box feature really helps us keep our presenters and moderator organized so that we can try our best to get to all of our questions. As always, if we don't get to your questions, you are more than welcome to email our presenters at the end of the webinar today. As a reminder, all of our virtual presentations are uploaded to the college's YouTube page with closed captions following the live webinar event. Finally, you are encouraged to stay until the end of the webinar so that we can gather your thoughts on today's presentation. There is a short 5-question quiz that will be at the end, and your feedback helps make our virtual programming even better. So thank you for your time and answering our short survey. Now I would like to quickly introduce our presenters. First, we'll start with Dr. Beth Livingston. She is the Ralph L. Sheets Associate Professor of Industrial Relations at the University of Iowa Tippie College of Business, an internal advisor with the Healthier Workforce Center of the Midwest, a NIOSH Center of Excellence, and the faculty director of the DOOR Tippie Women's Leadership Program. She received her PhD from the University of Florida and her MBA from the University of Kentucky and spent 8 years at Cornell University before moving to the Midwest. Her research has been highlighted in the New York Times, NPR, and the Harvard Business Review, and she has also been published in multiple top academic journals. Dr. Livingston has also done executive education, speaking engagements, and consulting for companies and nonprofits such as Accenture, John Deere, Yves Saint Laurent Beauty, HNI and Allsteel, and Hollaback, now Right to Be, and is the co-author of the book Shared Sisterhood with Dr. Tina Opie, published by the Harvard Business Review Press. Dr. Patrick Fan is a Henry B. Tippie Excellence Chair Professor in Business Analytics at the University of Iowa. He received his PhD in Business Administration in 2002 from the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. His research interests focus on the design and development of novel information technologies, AI, information retrieval, data mining, text analytics, and social media analytics, business techniques, and more, to support better business information management and decision-making. He has pioneered the application of genetic programming for search engine ranking and optimization of natural language processes and textual analytics for business applications such as financial statement risk assessment, uncovering products and service qualities from social media, and assessing crowdfunding success from project description, and finding product innovation ideas from user-generated content. You know, I've done many of these webinars and I always remember to turn off my cell phone. So I am so sorry if you just heard it ringing, because for the first time I got caught. So my apologies. Cindy Meis is our last presenter, is the director of Tippie Undergraduate Career Services. She has combined 20 years of university experience with over a decade of career coaching and advising. Her professional background in project management, sales, marketing, and client services at organizations like Direct Supply Medical, Oracle Software Solutions, and Goldman Sachs position her to offer insights across industry and careers. Cindy hopes to introduce innovative tools and ideas for embracing AI as a professional or a job candidate from a career service standpoint during our webinar today. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will hand it over to Patrick and Beth to get us started.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm excited to be here. I tell you, first of all, there is nothing more awkward than listening to yourself be introduced with your bio and it's being read. But also, I feel like I learn something new about my co-panelists every time you read those. So I go back and forth between whether I like hearing all the bios. Basically, I don't like hearing my own, and I love hearing yours, Patrick and Cindy. So I'm excited to talk to you all more about this, and I'm excited to hear what my co-panelists have to say as well. Thank you all for joining Patrick and Ashley and Cindy and I today to talk about how to AI proof your career. We've been talking about this issue of AI for a while now. Some people like Patrick have been doing research on it for a long time. And I have a grant where we're talking about how this interacts with how people work. And today we're going to just spend a little bit of time, Patrick and I, talking about some trends that we've seen and some tips that we have that are related to the trends we're seeing that are happening in business, as well as in research. And then we're going to pop it over to Cindy, who will give you some actionable tips on how this interacts with how you manage your career. And we're going to try to transition pretty quickly to Q&A because we imagine that we'll have lots of folks who have questions about what this means for them. And we're probably best able to do that through Q&A. So first things first, I'm sure all of you are here because you're hearing constantly about the growth of AI. I feel like it's on, there are so many front page articles being written, things happening that are trending topics on all the social media about AI. Particularly, I remember not too long ago, there being a whole brouhaha around ChatGPT, right? We're hearing these terms come up all the time. And I wanted to be clear that typically when we hear this being discussed, we're talking primarily about what's called generative AI. So things like ChatGPT that, generate text, images, videos that you prompt that create give you something. So put in a prompt and it spits out a picture, put in a prompt and it spits out an essay, right? These are the sorts of things that we're talking about with generative AI. On the horizon, we're hearing people talk about generative voice and video technologies, creative outlets, how they're going to use it. I've been following, for instance, the SAG-AFTRA strike that's happening in Hollywood right now with the Screen Actors Guild. And one of the hang-up points they were having was around AI, whether people who had acted in a show could have their likeness scanned and then use AI to, for instance, how we see people being aged into the future, right? Or generate particular types of actions using that input, and how actors felt about it. And so these are issues that are coming up in many different professions, even in ways that are difficult for us to kind of get our arms wrapped around at this point in time. Often some of the trends that we're seeing that interact with the types of jobs that most of the folks that I work with, the students I work with do, are things around augmenting processes at work. So writing, how do we make writing software easier? How do we generate code in fast ways, in ways that are, reduce the amount of effort that individuals are putting in, writing legal drafts, debugging software, writing resumes. Some of you all may have used it for things like this, or organizing work and research. I know that I have used it in that sort of way. And so, I know probably of both of us here, Patrick is probably way more knowledgeable in terms of how this generative AI technique comes to be, right? When you study it the way that you do. And so maybe you can tell us just a little bit about, what we're sort of talking about with generative AI.
So for generative AI, if you look at this slide, basically it's AI techniques that learn from the data, and the data can be about anything, the text, the images, the videos, and then you try to build a thing called foundational models. And then these foundational models are very, very large machine learning models, and then they train on this broad set of unlabeled data, and there's billions of parameters they have to tune for that. And one example would be the large language model that you heard a lot. And so these are the ones behind the ChatGPT. And this is getting everything very, very excited. And so the ChatGPT does is basically try to, using the generative AI technologies, learn these large language models that basically train on massive amount of data. And then the user can submit a prompt, and then you can generate the content, the images, and sometimes even like the video content potentially. So if you look at the polls from the Gartner, and they said, more than 30% of the executives saying that they're going to leverage generative AI for customer experience and retention related. So there's a huge amount of potential benefit where the business can potentially leverage this generative AI. Beth?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, it's interesting to think. I think sometimes we see the output, like there's the box you type in and we're like, well, I don't know how it's coming out. It seems like magic, right? It's literal black box as to what happens beneath it. And I think it's really helpful when you look at it like this and you're saying, no, you're training, right, a function on an extremely large amount of data. And that helps us, I think, to understand why why generative AI and why what you get out of ChatGPT keeps changing, right? Because the amount of data that you're training it on is constantly changing. And what is it learning? Well, it's learning through, right, the amount of data that it's training on. And I think this poll is, as Patrick said, really interesting that, they are investing in generative AI primarily around this customer experience, right? And around retaining employees. How can we use it to enhance the customer experience? I know many of us have interacted with chatbots, for instance, when we are buying things online, right? Hi, I'm here to help you. What can you say? And I think that is often the sorts of things that we're seeing the initial input, right? And I think what this poll is saying is that companies are going above and beyond that. How can we really use it, right, to enhance, as opposed to just, one little small thing that's being added to that sort of customer experience. I know as professors as well, right? We're not just teaching and researching about this, we're experiencing the challenges alongside the challenges that you all are experiencing as well. ChatGPT is a conversation in every teaching conference that I go to, at every research conference that I go to, every time I'm in my Facebook groups where we're talking, where there's professors and we're kind of talking about things, there's a lot of this conversation. How do I determine if students are using ChatGPT to write papers? How do I know some AI companies are saying, we can tell you if AI is being used by using AI, right? Like all of these interesting ways that we're trying to figure out how to teach in a land where generative AI is cheap and easy to procure for students. What is our value add as professors? And that's something that every time there's new technology that comes out, I think we're engaging with those challenging questions. We're also using generative AI in research. Patrick is spearheading generative AI issues in research, but even folks like me, who I don't build these sort of models, I don't analyze these sorts of models, but we as researchers are figuring out, can it help us to organize the research that we have? Can it help us to organize responses or to write letters of recommendation? And I think these are challenges that many professors are dealing with just the same as many of you are in your own jobs. I know one of the things that I see people talking about is, can it help me write basic code? Oftentimes what we see is we're analyzing data using many different types of data analytic softwares, right? There's so many, I can't even keep track of different, software you can use to analyze data. And it's how do you write code for those particular platforms? And using generative AI to say, I want to be able to, know if X is associated with Y, and it will spit out code to be able to test that, can be a really useful process for folks who may feel less comfortable with that sort of data analytics. And so the point here is we're all trying to adapt to this. You all are not the only ones who are showing up here of how AI is going to impact your career. We as professors are also navigating similar types of challenges as well. And with that, we want to talk just a little bit today about some tips to meet the challenge that AI is presenting to many different types of careers. And so we're going to go through 4 little things here. The first, don't ignore it. The second, adapt to work with it. The third, embrace lifelong learning. And the fourth, lean into your humanity and what your value add is. And Patrick and I are going to share some of our insights on this before we kick it over to Cindy. So Patrick.
Yes. So the first tip I want to give to you guys is do not ignore AI. And if you look at this, the industry trend right now, AI is just coming like a storm. And AI is everywhere, as Beth mentioned, and it's on the news media, it's on the, Wall Street Journals, New York Times, all the time. And then, in fact, if you look at the tools that's available, and I know one of the audience is asking questions like, what kind of tools should we, study, should we use? So if you look at the tools available, Google Documents, Google already incorporates AI, stuff inside. Microsoft Office, if you look at the Copilot initiative, released by Microsoft, they're going to be embedded in the Microsoft Office suite, all the time. And then if you look at the code development environment, IDEs, integrated development environment, they already, you can basically use a thing called plugins, using the code Copilot to try to help you to do the code debugging, as Beth mentioned, right? And then there's like a studio software like Adobe. Adobe now is spending enormous amount of money in terms of investing in AI, try to using the generative AI to help the creators, content creators, to generate all this content, images, and then do them automatically, like for example, photo editing, for these creators. So these tools are there, and If you look at the tools, how many tools do we have right now? These things going up like crazy, thousands of thousands available. And then if you saw the OpenAI, latest presentation 2 days ago, and then they just announced that they're going to make this ChatGPT more like a marketplace where you can basically develop your own GPT models. And then you could be the developer, you could be the entrepreneurs. And then you can imagine how this entire AI competition landscape is going to change. So my advice to you right now is that, we as a researcher and also we as a professionals, we need to think about how does that may impact our industry. For me as a researcher, I have to basically constantly keep myself, to learn all the latest development, to make sure that whatever I teach to my students are going to be up to date. So that's the important things that we need to understand. We cannot ignore this, the waves of the AI revolution. And then the other thing I want to mention, AI right now is penetrating in every industry. So if you look at around you, look at around yourself, think about it, all the major initiatives has been discussed within your company. You will understand that now AI is really trying to do something, for your company. Now, most of the things you will see today nowadays, like there will be some like a routine, labor intensive or repetitive jobs will be automated, will be replaced by these AI-based solutions. You can call them as a process automation. You can also call them as AI-based, process innovation. So these tools are there trying to basically save costs for the companies, and there will be some, job losses because of that. This trend cannot be stopped just because the cost cutting and the revenue and all this EPS, beating expectations. And then the other thing, I also want to mention that for the professional, for us, if we can potentially embrace the AI, and then the study have already shown that we can gain, 40% at least productivity gains. So this implies that, if you know AI, if you know some of the tools that can help you work with you, and then you can increase your productivity. That means you can contribute more value to your company. So that's why, there's a saying right now, very, very popular on the internet, saying that people with AI skills will replace people without the AI skills. So that's why we need to think about, how can we better empower ourselves? We just cannot ignore this. Beth?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and leads into our second tip, which is that we have to learn to adapt. If these trends, we can't ignore it, right? And when we see that these sorts of tools and approaches are proliferating, and they're going to continue to proliferate, right? Like it's a disruptive technology, and disruption does not necessarily mean negative, right? It means it can also mean opportunities, just like many disruptive technologies that have occurred over our lifetime and before my lifetime, right? These technologies can create huge disruptions to the way we operate and the way we live our lives. And that means we have to adapt, though, right? We have to adapt to a world where AI is part of that. If we put our head in the sand and we pretend that this is something that will just fly us by, then we'll be left on our heels when other people have these sorts of skills. And so one of the things that I think can be important here is thinking of AI as a tool. If you're living in a world where there's just so much information flying at you around AI and you don't even know how to wrap your arms around what's happening, I think one thing you can do is take a step back and say, okay, AI as a technology, it's a tool, right? It's something that I can use in my job and in my life. With that, it means finding something of interest to you that you can engage with. And Cindy, I know, is going to come in and give you some options and opportunities to dip your toe in the water with what AI might mean for you, and to try to find ways not to be scared with it. Whether that means, oh, you're into some sort of fandom and you want to create your own fan art using that, right? Whatever it is that excites you, right? Find a way to engage with AI in a way that allows you to see it as a tool and to learn how to engage and interact with it. You can also ask yourself questions about what this technology means for you right now, right? And it might not be something that you feel comfortable embracing right now, but then look in 5 years, where do you want to be with it? Where do you think it can impact the way you want to live your life? Do you have dreams about being an entrepreneur? Well, how can that help you? To what Patrick was saying, is there a way in which this can help you achieve those goals? Do you want to be a manager and a leader? Well, what does that mean for teaching and leading people who will be graduating when they've gone through all their high school and all their college with ChatGPT as being an option for them? What does that look like for you as a leader and the type of project work that you want to be able to do? And then think about another thing to think about is something that Patrick said, where he said, there are going to be jobs that are replaced, right? There are going to be jobs that are going to be fully automated, just as automation during the 1980s transformed the way that production happened across the world. There are going to be types of jobs that are automated using this type of technology that were not capable of being automated before. But for many of us, it's not our whole job that's going to go away. It's components of our job that are going to shift and change. And so if you think about your job as consisting of multiple parts, right? Some parts you like to do, some parts you don't like to do. What components of your job could be more enjoyable if they were made easier, right? Or if they were done by someone else. And you can think about that someone else right now. Just if I were able to offshore this to another person, if I got an assistant, right? How many of us dream of having the personal assistant who can manage all these components for us? What would that look like for you? And then think about ways in which AI could help with those things. So, right, you are not necessarily thinking of AI as a hindrance, but as something that can help you, something you can adapt to. Patrick?
Yes. So basically, based on what Beth just said, one of the things that we need to think about, as a professional, how can we keep abreast of ourselves in terms of, knowing the rapid revolution of this AI technologies. So one of the things we have to spend time and also maybe potentially invest on is like, maybe we should spend more time learning, taking some courses online, finding some, training opportunities, and then maybe taking them some AR training. For example, LinkedIn has tons of like trainings, that are freely available. Some of them may cost a little bit of money, and to teach you what is AI is about, how to use AI, and then what is ethical AI, what is responsible AI, things like that. And also Tippie College Business, we are in the process right now, try to revamp our the curriculums. We're going to offer some new opportunities for students to learn more about how to take advantage of AI, how to do the value creations using AI. So basically, you have to engage, keep the mindset like lifelong learning, just, think about in the next 10 years, 20 years also, how can you, invest your, the money and resources to improve, to upscale yourself, and then you will find potential tons of opportunities that may open up for you. So try to take advantage of the freely available or any of these Coursera courses that you can take, and also some of these online training programs that we offered by Tippie College Business as well.
Yeah, and it's so important because if you can see this as something that's inevitable, right? It's growing and something that I can use to help me, right? I can adapt to, then this lifelong learning should be something that's exciting, right? Something that you can do. And whether it is, getting hands-on with the sorts of things that Cindy's going to share here in just a moment, or, like Patrick said, engaging with the webinars we're providing, engaging with the changes in the curriculum that we're doing to adapt to these sorts of changes, or finding, different types of YouTube videos that help you to do this. A lot of this is, and I know it's kind of a buzzword, is experiential learning, just learning through experience, right? Getting your hands in there and seeing what it is. I find it fascinating, for instance, to engage in, I do find it interesting to really read your work, Patrick, because it helps me to understand what goes into these things. And for me, that's always just such an important part of learning and to embracing types of AI. It can seem so daunting at first. And then when I'm like, oh, here's the input, right, that it's being trained on. Here's how these things are being done. That helps me to not feel so scary, for it to feel like something that I can understand and get my arms wrapped around. The final tip that we have here is to lean into your humanity. And what we mean by that is people are still necessary. We look at the trends. We are here to teach and understand and do research. And there's not a world that I can see anytime in the near future where people are not going to be necessary to doing the jobs that need to be done, to manage people, to make the world a better place, to grow the economy. All of these things are still going to require people. Human decision-making is still irreplaceable, right? There's still accountability that is required here. In fact, if you look at this study out of Gartner, they said by 2030, AI agents without human oversight are going to lead to $100 billion in losses, right? That's without oversight and accountability. Companies do not like to lose money. They absolutely are going to be engaging with folks who have the sort of skills Patrick talked about to be able to provide the type of human oversight to AI tools to be able to make good decisions. And I think it is very important to find these sorts of things where your humanity adds value, right, Patrick? Ways in which that you can build on what the AI tool can do, right?
Yes, exactly. I think one of the things you will see that, the AI is most of the time going to do the thing called augmentation. So they try to augment your job. They're not going to try to replace your job. It's because we as a human being, we still have the final say. And then we still have to be responsible for every decision, that we're going to make. Just think about like doctor, if you let an AI robot, do all the surgeries now, and that process still have to be, monitored and controlled by the surgeon as well. And then at the end of the day, it's the surgeon who can say, hey, this surgery was done successfully with the help of AI. So we're going to basically view the AI as a tool and as a friend, and then we try to embrace it, and so that we can really help, to leverage our human, the soft touch, try to make this entire thing more, responsible and trustworthy. So there's going to be a lot of issues related to around the trust related to the application of responsible AI. And then I think Beth is going to share more on that.
Yeah, I thank you, Patrick. And I often think about that, right? Which is, where are there opportunities for our humanity, our human decision making, the things that our brains can do that as of right now, AI just can't do, right? And the relationships that we build with people is one thing, right? The relationships we build with people. I could perhaps teach content to my students, right, in AI. I could automate it and it could deliver what students need, but it will not replace me sitting down with a student who's struggling and trying to figure out what's going on with them, right? And trying to understand that. It's not going to be able to replace that. It's not going to be able to replace the fact that there are going to be times I need to adapt and shift and pivot based on what my students are thinking and learning at that point in time. There might be opportunities for me to be creative in ways that I wasn't able to do, right? Because I was so worried on doing a task that was really repetitive, but it needed to be done. And if AI could do that task, maybe there are opportunities for me to be creative in ways that I wasn't able to be before, right? There are also important components here with being ethical and empathetic decision-making, right? We joke about this sort of stuff, but, I think Patrick made it clear, these machines are learning based on large language models, right? This is data that we're putting into them. And it's important that we still have norms and culture and relationships that are built upon the way in which we interact with people. And ethics is going to be an issue that we continue to have to embrace and engage with. And it's a growing area of research and management researchers and in business researchers as well, which is, how do we understand this issue of accountability around AI decision-making, and where's the humanity in that? And so ultimately, being a person is still your biggest value add, right? There are things that you can do that AI cannot do. But learning to adapt and embracing this sort of lifelong learning can help you to figure out how to use AI as a tool to help you think about how your career can grow and how your dreams can grow alongside it. The final thing that we want to say here is just we're taking a snapshot in time in the middle of a huge trajectory that's continuing to grow, right? These trends are continuing. Some of that research that we shared here is part of that. There's continued research right now that's growing in ethics and AI. We have some colleagues who are presenting just on that. They're going to conferences or talking about ethics and AI around entrepreneurship, around issues. What does it mean to make decision? Who's accountable for what? Can we just say, well, the machine made me do it, right? And that's not how accountability works. This is how, right, as Patrick said, the surgeon still has to go talk to the patient and figure out what's needed to be done, right? There's still accountability. We see legislation coming out, and the people who make legislation may or may not understand all the component parts that are going into these issues, and they need us as participants in society to understand what's going on so that we can help them and help get people in charge who can make those right types of decisions around what this technology means for us in our careers. And finally, again, just as a something that I'm seeing as a trend in what I do is a lot of customer service is attempting to embrace AI. And a lot of that is around this revenue model and, these sort of shrinking profit margins around customer service. But one thing, I have a colleague named Idio, and she's in our department, and she does some really fascinating work. And one of the projects I remember her working on was, what does it feel like to be an employee that's working alongside chatbots? That by the time it gets to you, people are real annoyed because they've asked a gazillion questions into this chatbot and not getting what they needed to do. And the accountability lies with the person, right? And the person has to do that. And those are fascinating questions that businesses are going to have to reckon with moving into the future. I think finally here, Patrick, the last thing we kind of have to say is, you know, this is happening, whether you are ready for it or not, right?
Yes, I think, as we mentioned, repetitively, we have to embrace AI and we just cannot ignore it. And then we have to, for some of the audience, just, maybe sign up for our account with ChatGPT and get a free account, over there using the ChatGPT, free version 3.5, just see how ChatGPT can transform the work that you do every day. Now, I know some of the companies may not allow you to use the ChatGPT during your work session, and you can still use your cell phone or in your leisure time, just learning how, you can be better equipped with the AI tools. So to me, this is a fascinating, time for us to learn. And I also teach the courses to my students. I just ask them, hey, let you guys, explore this, the ChatGPT, and ask the, for example, I'm teaching the course on data management using this, writing the SQL queries. And I told the student, for your homework, why not just do 2 versions, one done by yourself, and see how much time you spend on it. And then I asked the student, let's using the ChatGPT do it, and then see how much time you spend on that. And then in the end, you could look at the pros and the cons, and you compare and see how much productivity you gain. The student is going to love that. In the end, they're going to say, hey, I got more than 40, even like 50% improvement on the productivities. So they see the value that the AI tools can help them to better equip them to do the job faster. So that, to me, that's the exciting part about AI.
100%. And I, those of you who are interested in this and a lot, and part of the human resources field, my colleague Emily Campion is really spearheading a lot of really fascinating research. And she just was a co-editor on a guest special issue at Personnel Psychology. And I'll have Ashley send this out to participants so you all can see it, which is just really about the role of generative AI and AI in selection and training and these sorts of things. And she's practices what she preaches, and she puts that into her classroom the same sort of way, which is, let's use this tool, let's see what it comes up, and then let's analyze where it was right, where it was wrong, what we can learn from it, and how we can learn about the technology by using the technology. And that's something we definitely want to demystify with this. And with that, Patrick and I are going to sling it over to Cindy, who's going to steal the screen sharing from me so that she can share some of how this might affect your careers.
So I want to thank Dr. Fan and Dr. Livingston for letting me be part of the conversation, but also Ashley Durham. So Ashley brought the group together, said that these faculty members had some wonderful expertise and content to share, and would career services like to have some perspective? And I said, oh boy, I would love to present with these PhDs, but it also moved me into an uncomfortable zone. And I had to actually sort of lean in and actually integrate some AI into preparing for this. So I'm going to be very transparent. I took all of my notes and created a prompt in ChatGPT that said, I am presenting with faculty, PhDs, expertise in their fields, and I need some help kind of organizing my ideas in order to present. And ChatGPT was able to produce a nice outline of 4 or 5 slides that allowed me to then manage and streamline what I wanted to share with you today. So I don't believe I'm going to AI proof your job, but I do believe I can help you embrace AI and use it to enhance your professional experience. So to build off of some of the things that Beth and Patrick have already shared is my first slide. And it's about embracing that for efficiency, simplicity, and using it to your advantage, both as a professional, and then I also want to talk a little bit about as a career candidate. So most of you are already using AI in some capacity. If it is a smart home device, as Beth spoke about, the chat bots for customer service issue to figure out where your shipment is or why something you received was the wrong color. But even your Amazon Alexa or your Siri app, those are all AI and all, sort of those personal assistants for you. So one of the things I would like to charge you with as part of this presentation and this webinar as a whole is to consciously pick one other AI tool to start playing around with, start using in your everyday work, or even in a volunteer or some other capacity in your life. So certainly AI is influencing the job market. It's for sure creating opportunities, but it's automating things. It's enhancing the work we do. It's enhancing perhaps the candidate experience as part of recruitment and hiring. And it's also offering us a lot of tools. So it's fair to say it's coming, it's evolving, and it's changing the way we do work, the way we do business, but also how we want to grow and be intentional about our professional growth, but also how we are operating and functioning as job candidates. So I'm going to share some very specific tools, both, like I said, on the professional side of AI, but also as the career candidate. And so I'm going to jump into those. And I know there's going to be a lot of content on these slides, but I wanted it all in one place so that Ashley can share it with you afterwards. So I want to highlight some tools that you could use as a professional. And there's some 7 different categories here, from language, visualization, design and editing, presentations, grammar and proofreading, marketing, and project management. These are great tools for you to, like I said, pick one. I use ChatGPT all the time because I have a chronic ability to have a typo in every email. And when I'm posting to LinkedIn on the behalf of the college or sending an important email to leadership, I use the ChatGPT to help refine and proofread my messages, because even though I know the difference between there and there, I get typing too fast and I make errors. So ChatGPT has saved me from myself and has been a tool I use every day. AI is evolving. So as professionals, we want to stay up to date. And going back to what both Beth and Patrick said, is you want to join in a LinkedIn group or perhaps a professional association. Follow an influencer who has an emphasis on AI, perhaps in your industry or field of interest, and let those updates, those trends become part of your daily and lifelong learning. Here are some tools related to career success. So the University of Iowa is already using JobScan, VMock, and Big Interview for our Iowa MBA, our Masters of Finance and Analytics, the MAC program, as well as our undergraduate programs. I want to highlight JobScan quickly because they have the ability for you to use some of their free services where you can put in a resume along with a job description and do some matching so that you have the ability to fine-tune, tailor, and personalize your resume for a specific job opportunity. The other ones here are just some for reference. And again, as you think about your job, your career path, HR professionals are going to know if you're reusing the same resume over and over and over. So use AI to your advantage as you are tailoring documents, exploring opportunities, even determining fit and preparing for interviews and applications. Then lastly, I want to leave you with this. This is a resource I used as I was examining and preparing for this AI presentation. This book is ChatGPT heavy, but it's got some really valuable insights, and it talks through some practical tips. For example, how to customize the prompts and using prompts effectively. I think that's what I've learned the most using ChatGPT in my daily work is I might take all of my notes and then create the prompt. So then it's helping me organize information that I know and enhancing it. And so you will get better at creating prompts. You will get better at the work you're doing with using AI if you use it on a regular basis. So as I close, again, I want to challenge you with just picking a new AI tool that perhaps you're not using. And again, it could be work that you're doing with the Little League ball team. It could be something that you're doing in terms of a personal blog or LinkedIn. And use that consciously because it will spill over into the work that you're doing and it will help you grow as a professional. With that, we want to leave plenty of time for questions. So again, I want to thank Dr. Fan and Dr. Livingston for letting me be part of this conversation, and we will turn it over to Ashley for questions.
Yes, and we have a lot of questions to get through. So hopefully we will get to all of them in the last 20 minutes of this webinar. But as I mentioned at the start, if you have any follow-up questions, all of our presenters today are willing to take those questions via email or LinkedIn. So please feel free to reach out. So let's dive on in. Kevin Kirk asks, With a tool like ChatGPT, is there a concern with what is entered to the prompt for a privacy or data perspective?
I can take that first. So ChatGPT give you this option when you try to open up the account. There's an option that you can turn this tracking your chat off. So which means if you turn that off, that as a control, then whatever the chat session that you have after you are done with it will be wiped out. It will not going to be used for training purposes. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to mention is like, a lot of the context, when you try to use ChatGPT, and if you are being tracked, if you worry about the privacy concerns, do not use ChatGPT for any of this very sensitive kind of data and or questions, because there's always a chance that there could be some function creep kind of things where things could be misused potentially. But I trust that right now ChatGPT, especially from OpenAI, they value this the privacy very seriously, considering all the user requests. That's why they have this feature that's available. And the other thing which I also want to mention that a lot of the enterprise right now, they are trying to develop their own in-house like a ChatGPT version, quote unquote ChatGPT, not using the ChatGPT model, but more like open source models. Those in-house ChatGPT equivalent version tools can be used inside the enterprise. There's no privacy concerns. You can just using that to ask any questions because it's all confined within your enterprise firewalls.
Yeah, that's a really great point. When if I use it, I'm careful not to, for instance, put in data that could be FERPA related, right? Which is our student information or financial information. Or if I'm doing research and my IRB doesn't say I can share certain kinds of, I'm not putting data into it, right? So I'm using my own judgment with that because there are protections, for instance, but I am erring on the side of being as careful as possible with the information that I'm sharing. But I think in general, I trust that little box, right? That I'm not adding to the training material in that way, but I think being judicious about what you share is important.
As a quick follow-up, Kevin also asks, is there anyone at the University of Iowa who is a good resource to talk to about evaluating use cases and opportunities for this tool? I don't know if anyone would know that off the top of our heads here. Sorry,
Yeah.
Kevin,
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all using it in different, I think we're all using it, or not all of us, but I think many of us are using it in different ways. And so I think it really just depends on what your particular context is, like what industry you're in, what your concerns are, what are you working with? For instance, if you are in thinking about, well, how do I use this in hiring? What are the pros and cons? I would say reach out to Emily Campion, right? She's doing a ton of research on this. If your issue is with sort of equity and the way in which certain kinds of office work is being automated, I have a grant on that. So you see what I'm saying? Like if you're interested in, how you can, Patrick's done research on so many different industries, but again, I think it depends on what your context is and what you're reaching out for.
that's a great answer, Beth. And somebody just populated into our little Q&A. ITS is currently working on this, so stay tuned.
There you go. Answering our own questions. Yeah.
There we go. So another great question from Clara. I'm interested in your thoughts on how educational institutions can strike a balance between fostering creativity and innovation while also preventing AI-generated plagiarism. This is a great question. Very hot topic.
So for the AI-generated plagiarism, this is a very, very hard topic. And if you look at the current research, findings, there's no such a tool that it can detect that a writing or a essay was written by AI or a human being. They cannot detect the AI generated content. Okay, the reason why is because you can basically run the same kind of prompt multiple times, and then the content will be changed and then won't be detected. So any effort try to detect that are going to be pretty much in a very few time. But on the other hand, though, we as faculty members, we are very, very cautious about this. We also know there could be opportunities where AI could be used as a tool, to basically to give the students some unfair, kind of a competitive advantage, right? In terms of, hey, I do much better because I'm using AI, and then the other student didn't have access to the AI tools, then they don't, have that advantage. So when we try to design all the assignments, all these assessment, including the exams, we basically make it very, very clear whether you are allowed to use the AI tools or whether you are not going to be allowed to use the AI tools. And then, if you're not going to allow to use AI tools, then you cannot use cell phone, you cannot use computer. Everything can be paper-based essentially. So we try to be very cautious about this, and then we try to be fair as well. Then at the same time, we also do not want to discourage students from using these AI tools. That's why we try to maybe design some homework, design some of this kind of pedagogy kind of assignments that allow the student to really demonstrate how they can be creative in terms of using AI to design, to work on certain things.
And I'll say along the lines with that, something that Cindy said, that she uses ChatGPT to help her. She figured, here's the things that are my weaknesses, and I use it to shore up my weaknesses. We want to encourage students to find ways to use that in a way that makes their work better, right? We want to encourage those sorts of things. We don't want them to get to a job where everyone, like to Patrick's point, everyone's using ChatGPT and you don't know how to use it, right? We don't want that. I will say as an aside, we as faculty are actively talking about this all the time. This is not something that we are, shooting aside. We're not, going full on barrels out and, assuming that every student is always lying, right? These are things that we're actively trying to figure out. And like in just our faculty meeting for our department, for instance, we are actively talking about this, and we are learning from those faculty members we have that do this really well, that design activities that teach, that help us to assess in different ways. And some of that is, to Patrick's point, pedagogical. We as faculty are going to have to adapt the same way we're telling you in your careers you have to adapt. We have to learn how to do that. But those similar sort of things happened when we started with online learning and online tech. Like, we're constantly having to adapt the way we teach to different types of technology. There have always been students who want to skirt by on ethics. Always, since the beginning of time, whether it's writing things on your hand or whispering, or someone puts a hat on and pretends there's somebody else to take a test. Like, these are things that happen, and we are all aware of those things. And now it's just finding, there are newer, cheaper, easier ways for students to do this. How do we incentivize students to do things the right way? How do we make learning worth their while? And that is oftentimes an us issue that we have to navigate as well.
We have a question from an anonymous attendee, but I think they're a business analytics student. What advice would you give to students who are currently enrolled in the business analytics major? Will the number of jobs increase or decrease over the next few years as AI is used more and more in industries?
I can take that first. If you look at the historically, the industrial evolutions, when we have this industrial evolutions, more jobs are being created. So I can see the same thing, even though we are in the age of AI, even though AI may replace certain type of jobs, but there will be more and more this kind of AI-enabled opportunities coming up. So I do want all the students to try to keep learning, keep embracing yourself with AI, and then there will be tons of AI-related job opportunities out there. And then people are going to need the skills with AI so that they can basically do better. That's why the employers are hiring the people with the AI skills. So you just need to spend more time taking all the necessary courses, getting all the certificate done, and then, put your resume really, marketable, so that you can really compete against the others. Cindy has put up this great, sheet for you. So just learn how to use those tools, to help you to position yourself better.
It's exactly what Patrick is saying. As some jobs go away, there's gonna be a whole other new jobs. And I think there's a statistic out there, like the job that my kids are gonna have doesn't even exist yet. So I'm a big fan of our business analytics program and all the work that they're doing so that our students can understand data, synthesize it, and then drive strategy and drive decisions. And if there's a little bit of AI peppered in there, there will be jobs.
Well, Cindy, along those lines, how can I upskill or adapt to the changing job landscape influenced by AI and automation to remain competitive and advance in my career?
Well, there's certainly our courses at the University of Iowa in the master's program with our Iowa MBA, our certificate programs. But, Patrick shared a really great tip as part of the presentation. There's a lot out there in like LinkedIn Learning and these mass online classes. They're out there for you to use. So being deliberate and intentional about it, because then you're also getting something that is it can be certified, right? So sometimes on resumes, people will use a sliding scale to kind of rank their skill or ability, and it's subjective. So I don't love those. So being able to say you had this many credits or you did this many licensures to get to a certain point, I think is really important, because you're not an expert until someone else tells you you're an expert.
This is an interesting one. Generation AI hallucination is a common issue stemming from the tool trying to provide an answer versus being limited to the training data. How is the industry trying to guard against AI hallucinations, especially in domain-specific arenas that are regulated?
I'm going to leave that to the PhDs.
I was going to say, Patrick.
All right, I'll take it on that. And so hallucination is one common problem for these large language models, and sometimes they do produce the fact that may not exist. And that's why, we, especially from the responsible AI research perspective, we need to think about how we can design the ways and mechanisms to safeguard the output from these AI tools. One thing you will find out that, as the research continue evolving, the hallucination problem is going to become less an issue. Why? It's because when they try to produce the content, they can always do the thing called fact checking afterwards. So think about it like a Bing chat using this ChatGPT as their backend. So Bing chat basically using the search engine result, and then they run the search engine result through the ChatGPT. They produce the results, and then they're also going to try to do the fact checking with the sources to make sure whatever the output you get, going to be, validated. So in other sense, I think this kind of hallucination can potentially be mitigated, with the proper safeguard rails that we can provide.
Yep, I have nothing more to add to that. So.
Stephen asks, how important is it to learn programming languages if I can just ask ChatGPT how to write code?
Well, this is a question I think the student asks me all the time. Why are we still taking the class? But I told my student, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, you are the one going to be responsible, right? You are the one going to be delivered, going to certify, hey, this is the code guaranteed to work for this particular problem. AI can help you write the code, but you have to certify that code to work. So that's why, you have to be knowledgeable in terms of understanding this code produced by ChatGPT, by the AI tools. So I think, you have to keep an open mindset in terms of basically train yourself, okay, to be knowledgeable in the coding, in the programming. And then once you are capable of understanding this distinguishing between the good and bad coding practice, then you look at the output from ChatGPT. Is the code really work? Sometimes the code produced by ChatGPT may not even work at all. That's why you have to do some little bit debugging to make sure, or do the reprompting to make sure the code can work in your scenario. So I think, try to using this AI as your companion tool, not try to say that, hey, I'm going to try to let AI do all the job. I'm just drinking coffee on the side, So that's not the attitude. So just try to embrace, and then at the same time, make sure you are the boss, you are in control, and then you're going to let the AI do the job, try to help you to increase your productivity, not to replace your job completely.
Yeah, the cost of making mistakes is often high, right? Right now in the abstract, you're thinking, oh, wow, yeah, I make a mistake, whoopsie do, right? But in the real world and jobs that you have, the cost of making a mistake can be monetarily incredibly high, right? You launch a program that you say has worked and you haven't fully debugged it because you can't understand what's going on. You're talking patches, you're talking so much money that could be lost with that. If I'm talking about code and I'm analyzing data and I'm writing a paper and I put my name on it, that this is what we found and this is what we did, and then it turns out, no, actually you ran completely wrong analyses because you didn't debug the code, who's responsible for that? Whose reputation is on the line? That's me. And so understanding what you're doing is important for those sorts of things. That means, it doesn't mean that you have to be able to do all the long division by hand, right, to do everything right, but you need to understand, right, what that looks like to be able to make decisions based on it.
And I just like to add, as Beth and Patrick outlined, the sort of the humanity of it. And this doesn't have to do with coding, but even if you're using something for content, and I have done this, and it doesn't sound like me anymore. And so, it might get you 80% there, but you got to do the checking. You got to change it into your language and your voice, and make sure it's representing you as that professional. I've already started to even notice I can tell when a LinkedIn post has been written by Chat GPT because there's so many little icons, and that's not who I am. So those come out. Or an email typically starts with, "I hope this email finds you well." And so you got to make it your own. You got to double check it. It is your reputation.
We are people after all.
Oh, I'm sorry, Beth.
Nope, you're good.
We do have a couple of questions about, are there any AI powered tools that are particularly helpful for entrepreneurs?
I know, based on my research online, I've seen a lot of LinkedIn posts that share the tips in where ChatGPT, especially the latest version, can really be used as a powerful tool to find new ideas and for entrepreneurial ideation stage. So you might want to look at those posts, just do a quick LinkedIn search on this using the AI to help you to do the entrepreneurship ideations. I think they can do a fantastic job. Just ChatGPT by itself can do a fantastic job in terms, give you these ideas, and also how do you prepare for those proposals? Where do you looking for funding sources, things like that? There will be a lot of things that ChatGPT can do right now, and that's why if you look at OpenAI, the vision plan down the road, you will see millions of customized GPTs for every different area that you're going to pursue. Entrepreneur is one. You can potentially find like an entrepreneurial Chat GPT that is available from the GPT stores from OpenAI. Then you can just go and then apply that and then use it for your entrepreneurship endeavors. So just give a try on the ChatGPT. I've seen a lot of good feedbacks using the tool for entrepreneurship activities.
Just as a quick, go ahead, Beth. I'm sorry. We keep
No, go ahead. No. Because you're probably going to preempt
what I was going to say. Because I was going to say, so if you have something to add, I'm going to ask another quick question, but so please continue.
No, please go.
Okay. Well, Honor just has a quick funny comment because I feel this too. He says, I have been writing, I hope this email finds you well since for forever. So I feel that too. I always start my emails that way. We do have time for about one more question, and I think we'll go with, how can AI tools be used to enhance my job search, improve my resume, or help me find the right career opportunities? I know we've kind of talked a lot about the different resources that are out there, but there are a lot of questions about just training and the resources that are available. So I've tried to pop some of those into the chat, and then we will certainly share those in the email that we send following this webinar. So if we could just kind of talk about those resources one more time, I think we'll be right at 1 o'clock.
So I just want to say quickly, I tried to put as many of those as I could on that slide, so you'll have those resources. But to Patrick and Beth's knowledge, there's thousands of them out there, and I had a whole other slide of resources for like travel and project management. So there's something out there for everybody. But as you think about yourself as the job candidate, it can help with that customizing of your resume. It can help with interview prep. It can help you determine a gap analysis of like, well, what do I need to be in this career in 5 years? There's some assessment stuff out there. So there's lots of different points as you think about all the pieces of the career or job search ecosystem. It can help you in all of those, because it is going to be about customizing and tailoring and making sure you're a fit, both for yourself, but also on that employer side. And then as the HR people are using it with applicant tracking systems, there is some AI peppered into that. But it's not going into a black hole. They're just looking to make sure you read the job description and your resume matches. There's still a human component, and they're moving you through that tracking system. There's still some human function in there, and they want to make sure they're not losing anybody, and that's why they use those systems. So it can actually make your candidate experience better. So if there is a piece of your search that you are struggling with, there's probably an AI tool to help support it.
a really great point, and I will share also when we share out some stuff. I'll put it in the chat, and Ashley can send out. You know, I had mentioned my colleague Emily Campion, but she's been working with some hiring companies that use AI, right? And she's been consulting with them. And so she has some really interesting thoughts about the role of AI in hiring. And that can help you as you're preparing for your career to think, well, okay, not just how can you use it to help your resume, help you prepare, but what are the companies who are hiring me, how are they using it? Right, which can help you to better understand how to position yourself, whether it's upskilling that you need, how you present yourself, how you use search terms, how you format your resume, whatever those things may be. So we'll share some of those resources as well.
All right, well, that brings us almost to 1 o'clock. So thank you, Beth and Cindy and Patrick, and thank you everyone for attending the AI Proof Your Career webinar today. When the event ends in just a moment, you'll see a quick survey. We'd be grateful if you could share your thoughts and help us make future virtual programming even better. On behalf of the Tippie College of Business, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and as always, go Hawks!